Picture this, a flawless green lawn, perfectly trimmed, perfectly uniform. But what if I told you this manicured green carpet is part of an environmental disaster hiding in plain sight? Let's take a closer look. Grass lawns cover over 40 million acres of land in the United States alone. That's an area roughly the size of the entire state of Georgia. Lawns have become one of the largest irrigated crops in America. But instead of giving us food, shade, or shelter, lawns are guzzling up water, they're spewing out greenhouse gases, they're leaching chemicals into our waterways. They may look great, but they're actually working against the environment. Now, just so we're absolutely clear, I'm not talking about native grasses or flowery fields. I'm talking about those green, perfectly manicured, perfectly smooth lawns that you see in every suburb in America. If it looks like this and you don't water it, mow it, or fertilize it, then it's probably not part of the problem. Believe it or not, lawns didn't originate with the American obsession for having the perfect yard. It goes back much further. Think more like castles and estates and those sprawling green gardens you see in those streaming shows on TV. You know, the ones that your wife loves and you pretend not to like. Lawns were nothing more than a tool of the aristocracy to display their superiority. Fast forward a few centuries and the invention of the lawnmower made it possible for everyone to embrace the perfect lawn obsession. Add a little post-World War II housing boom, some clever marketing from lawn care companies, and suddenly you've got millions of suburbanites worshiping at the altar of perfectly manicured grass. So here's the twist. Lawns may look beautiful, but they're not the planet-saving, oxygen-producing wonder a lot of people seem to think that they are. Now, what we all learned in school is true. Plants take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. But not all plants are created equally. Suburban grass is a low net oxygen producer, especially when you compare it to other things like trees or bushes or diverse meadows. And then what happens when you cut the grass? Those lawn clippings, when they decompose, are using up most of the oxygen they produced. And not only that, but they're producing methane and carbon dioxide. And that's not the only dirty secret lawns are hiding. From herbicides to pesticides and gas-guzzling lawnmowers, we'll soon uncover just how much our obsession with green grass is damaging our planet. But also, we're going to look at some eco-friendly alternatives that you can replace your lawn with that are really cool and way more effective. So to the lawn enthusiasts and skeptics alike, it's time to buckle up because we're about to take a deeper dive into the cult of the mower. Now, to understand the modern obsession with lawns, we need to go way back to 17th century Europe where the story of the lawn first took root. Let's imagine the sprawling estates of 17th and 18th century English and French nobility. Wide, open lawns, but they're not covered with crops or livestock. They're just decorative. Now, these are nothing more than shows of wealth and power. After all, nobody but the super wealthy could afford to have huge tracts of land that are tended after by armies of workers. Back then, a lawn was the ultimate flex. It said, I have land and the labor to maintain it. But those lawns were actually very different from the cookie-cutter suburban grass we see today. Those early lawns were made of hardy grasses, wildflowers, and even herbs. Sheep were often employed as lawnmowers, grazing the grass to keep it short. They actually used much more sustainable, eco-friendly practices than the ones we use today. Then came the Industrial Revolution and the invention that would change lawn care forever, the lawnmower. In 1830, Edwin Budding, an English engineer, invented the first mechanical lawnmower. And suddenly the dream of a perfect trim lawn became available to the masses, or at least the middle class. This invention revolutionized how people kept their lawns. Now anyone that could afford a mower could have that sleek, smooth look, and it changed the way we landscaped forever, which laid the groundwork for lawn care to become a mainstream practice. Fast forward to post-World War II America. The baby boom, the rise of suburbia, and the American dream all contributed to lawns becoming the ultimate symbol of middle-class success. With more families buying home in the suburbs, lawns weren't just a luxury anymore. They became an expectation. Home ownership of a green lawn came as a package deal. Green manicured lawns became the suburban badge of pride, a sign that you were living the good life. You were part of the status quo. But this was no accident. Lawn care companies and advertisers saw an opportunity to not just sell products, but a lifestyle. Miracle-Gro, True Green, and Scott's began aggressively marketing their products. And their message was clear. A healthy lawn wasn't just about aesthetics. It was a moral responsibility. Ads from that time portrayed lawns as a sign of good citizenship. If you didn't maintain your lawn, well, what kind of neighbor were you? Keeping up with the Joneses quite literally became about having the greenest, most pristine lawn. And that's how the lawn care industry boom began. Fertilizers, pesticides, lawnmowers, sprinklers, you name it. Suburban Americans were systematically trained to love their lawn one commercial at a time. And before long, they became a cultural obsession. As I mentioned earlier, today there's over 40 million acres of lawn in the United States. Lawns are now the largest single crop grown in America, but unlike other crops, lawns aren't feeding anyone. They don't provide any shelter or resources, and their seemingly sole purpose of providing a place for people to gather could be done a lot better by any number of low-lying ground covers that don't require maintenance. And it's not like the obsession with grass is global. In many places, wasting time and resources on a crop you can't eat would be considered ridiculous. In arid regions like the Middle East, a lawn would be considered impractical, even laughable. What it really comes down to, even today, is status. Homeowners associations and community rules enforce lawn standards. People will spend thousands of dollars to maintain a green and edible patch outside their house. So here's the question: why do we keep doing it? Maybe it's just tradition. Maybe it's to fit in. Or maybe it's because there's a $300 billion a year lawn care industry whose job it is to keep us hooked. And in the last 75 years, they've become very good at their job. The sheer number of products and services designed to maintain that perfect lawn is staggering. Chemical treatments, landscaping services, fertilizers, aeration. It's no wonder lawns remain part of the American dream. It's become so ingrained in our idea of homeownership that we don't even ever stop to think about its environmental cost. So what is the cost? Sure, it all started as a symbol of status and success. But maintaining lawns today comes at a significant environmental price. And that's where things get messier. Lawns may have become a cultural staple, but they still come with a pretty high environmental price tag. Let's break it down, starting with one of the biggest culprits: water. Lawns are incredibly thirsty. In fact, they're one of the biggest consumers of water in residential areas. A 10 by 10 square of lawn will use 62 gallons of water a week. That's millions of gallons just for grass that doesn't feed anyone. In water-scarce regions like the western US, lawns are basically stealing precious water that can be used for more important things like drinking water or agriculture. Look at the situation with those farms in eastern Idaho. 500,000 acres of American farmland is subject to water curtailment if water rights can't be resolved. We're talking about generational farms. That's part of American culture. And more importantly, it's part of our food system. Just a small percentage of what this nation wastes every year on lawns could easily save every last one of those farms. And it's not just in dry areas where water use becomes problematic. Across the United States, about 1/3 of all residential water goes to maintaining lawns. In some states like California that experience drought and forest fires, this obsession with green grass is particularly troubling. We're pouring billions of gallons of water into the ground just to keep grass alive. I made a video on social media about lawns that got millions of views. And it's funny because the #1 comment I heard from people was, "I've never watered my lawn." Which is odd considering that for the last few years, the lawn irrigation industry has been seeing record profits. The amount of water has been increasing steadily over the last few decades and has easily outpaced the growth in the housing market. And water waste is only part of the issue. Let's talk about the chemicals. Each year, millions of pounds of herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers are poured on lawns. Just take fertilizer, for example. The 80 million pounds we use on lawns every year in the US may sound like a lot, but it's a drop in the bucket when you compare it to the 100 million tons used on grass worldwide every year. And guess what? Most of it doesn't stay in your yard. It runs off of yards and into waterways and down storm drains and ends up working its way out to the ocean. From there, it creates toxic algae blooms, and those, in turn, create dead zones, like the one in the Gulf of Mexico that's 6,400 square miles. You see, first the fertilizer causes the algae to bloom. It grows green and large, but then it dies off. And as it dies, it decomposes, and that uses up all the oxygen in the water. And when that happens, it kills off all the marine life in that area. And this isn't just happening in isolated spots. It's a global issue. And then there's the lawn care equipment. Gas-powered mowers, edgers, trimmers, leaf blowers, weed whackers, they're all part of your typical lawn care toolkit. What a lot of people don't realize is how much pollution those machines generate. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, gas-powered lawn equipment accounts for 5% of the nation's air pollution. As a matter of fact, running a gas-powered lawnmower for 1 hour creates as much pollution as driving a car for 45 miles. Machines that run a gas-oil blend like weed whackers or chainsaws, now those will produce almost 6 times as much. I don't know about you, but that feels like an awful lot of emissions to me. And that's not even factoring in the noise pollution. We've all heard the whine of a lawnmower kicking up on a quiet Saturday morning. Yeah, you may find it annoying on the day you're supposed to sleep in, but it's actually disturbing all the wildlife too. But one of the sneakiest ways lawns are contributing to environmental damage happens after you mow. You may not think much of those grass clippings that you leave on the lawn or in a pile in the corner, but they're actually doing something called anaerobic composting. See, that grass is full of sugars. And when those sugars break down, it's going to use up most of the oxygen that it produced. And then it's going to belch out carbon dioxide and methane. Now, carbon dioxide is bad, but methane is a greenhouse gas that's about 25 times more effective at trapping heat in the atmosphere. So while nobody's really talking about it, your lawn is actually contributing to climate change. And this is happening in millions of lawns all across the world. Another misconception is that grass produces so much oxygen that it zeroes out its own carbon footprint. And all the emissions from lawnmowers and chemical production comes out to a net gain. But that's also false. One of the things that frustrates me most is how many stats are out there that are incomplete or just inaccurate. And the primary reason these stats are inaccurate is because the foundations built to figure them out are paid for by the lawn care industry. So they'll put in big, bold print stats like an acre of grass will produce enough oxygen for 64 people a day. And man, that sounds impressive, doesn't it? And that same lawn, as it decomposes, is releasing 1,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide per year. We've all learned to think about things in terms of oxygen versus carbon, but there's so much more going on when a lawn breaks down. For example, the #1 gas released when a lawn breaks down is nitrous oxide. Now, one of the big problems with nitrous oxide is that it's really, really good at trapping heat in our atmosphere, which is bad, really bad. And then on top of that, there's the bucket loads of methane it's producing. So it's producing methane and nitrous oxide and carbon dioxide, but you want to know the real kicker? As that lawn breaks down, it's not just producing all those greenhouse gases. As it composts, it's actually burning up a significant portion of the oxygen that it produced. The microbes that are breaking down the sugars in that grass, well, they use oxygen and water to do it. The kind of grass that you find in suburban lawns also has a really short root structure. Now, what that means is it doesn't go deep into the ground. And because of that, it's very inefficient when it comes to sequestering carbon in the soil. As soon as you start comparing a lawn to a diverse ecosystem like a prairie or a meadow, it quickly becomes clear that there are no comparison between the two, and lawns are just a vacuum for biodiversity. They don't offer habitat or food for pollinators, birds, and other wildlife. In contrast, a wildflower meadow or a mixed garden can support a variety of species. Places like this support the ecosystem and create biodiversity that's good for everything. Lawns, on the other hand, well, those are essentially sterilized of wildlife. Ironically, that's one of the reasons people most commonly use for defending their lawn. They'll say things like, I don't want snakes in my yard, or I don't need ticks on my animals. Okay, well, that's fair, except for one problem. A lawn's actually not doing anything to deter snakes or ticks. Lawns really only serve one purpose, and that's creating a green outdoor space. Now, if you actually want to protect yourself from snakes and ticks, the real way to go is by co-planting with biodiversity. You can plant marigold, lavender, or rosemary. How about planting lemongrass? It's got citronella oil in it, so it'll even help deter mosquitoes. So between the water use, chemical runoff, emissions, and low biodiversity, grass lawns are more of an environmental villain than we've been led to believe. And with so many eco-friendly alternatives available, why are we still clinging to grass? All right, I feel like I've probably beaten my point home enough about the environmental damage of lawns. So let's move on to the fun part, alternatives. Now, what if I told you that there are plenty of ways to transform your lawn into a vibrant, green, eco-friendly space that doesn't suck up resources? First up, native plant gardens. Native plants are locally grown species, so they're already acclimated to your climate. Unlike grass lawns that require constant mowing, watering, and maintenance, native plants are actually adapted to your area, so they need very little to thrive. Plus, they provide food and shelter for local wildlife, including pollinators like bees and butterflies. In arid regions, a lot of homeowners are turning to xeriscaping. That's a landscaping method that focuses on drought-resistant plants. Think succulents, cacti, and other species that need little to no water. Not only does xeriscaping save water, but it can also create stunningly beautiful landscapes that are far more interesting than a flat patch of grass. Then there's the option of turning part of your yard into a wildflower meadow. Meadows are not only stunning, but they're also incredible for biodiversity. Wildflowers attract pollinators, birds, and beneficial insects, creating an oasis in your backyard. Meadows require very little mowing, maybe once a year. If you're someone who enjoys getting your hands dirty, you might consider edible landscaping. Why have a lawn when you can have a garden full of fresh vegetables, fruits, and herbs? Edible landscaping saves you money by covering your food costs. Not only that, but it lowers your carbon footprint when you don't have to take trips to the store. Plus, imagine the satisfaction of growing your own food. Also, a garden's a great lesson for kids. They can learn where their food comes from and how it should be made. And take it from me, gardening together can be a really fun family activity. Another alternative that's gaining popularity are ground covers like clover. Unlike grass, clover is a nitrogen-fixing plant, so it actually improves the soil health as it grows. It stays green without watering, requires little mowing, and it's loved by pollinators. Plus, it's soft to walk on. Clover lawns are also super resilient. They're drought resistant, and they never need any fertilizer to stay green. Once you add in clover's natural tendency to suppress weed, it makes it a really great option. And if you're not into clover, there's a ton of choices. Creeping thyme, Asiatic jasmine. I mean, really, depending on whatever your needs are, there's something to fill it, and probably a dozen choices. Even if you're not sold on any of that, there is one other option. At the very least, make more sustainable choices when it comes to your lawn care. Go with electric lawn tools instead of gas. And find a solar solution to charge them. Limit your water usage. Aerobically compost your grass clippings. Find ways to save on water, like a rain catchment system. At the end of the day, it's your lawn, and I'm not telling you what to do with it. I'm just trying to give you some information. Believe me, there was a time when I was just like you. I mowed my lawn every week. But times change, and so did I. After all that, what do you think? Is it really worth sticking with a traditional grass lawn? Lawns may have started as a status symbol, but today we know they're draining our resources, polluting our planet, and contributing to climate change. The good news is you have the power to make a change. Maybe you're gonna plant some native plants. Maybe you're gonna plant a ground cover. Maybe you're gonna put in a garden. I even hear that some people are going with moss. Every day more and more people are waking up. The lawn revolution is here. Some people are doing it because it's better for their wallets. Some people are doing it because it's better for the environment or for wildlife. Some people are trying to save the pollinators. But no matter what your reason, it's a good one. And I don't think you need to do it all at once. Start small. Throw a garden bed in your backyard. Plant some lemongrass and marigold and clover around your borders. Or just practice some more environmentally healthy options. It's up to you to be the change you want to see in the world. Because in the long run, this isn't our world. We're just borrowing it from the next generation. Have a good one. Did you like this video or hate it? Leave a comment and let me know why. Otherwise, you can always just like and subscribe.